Dispatch, he's got my gun. He's got my gun. I'm shot.
Dispatch, he's got my gun. He's got my gun. I've been shot. I pray to God I never have to hear that phrase on the radio. The video that we're going to be discussing today, or the incident we're going to be discussing, is going to be this one that happened in Tallahassee, Florida on March the 8th, 2024 at about 1 p.m. This is a call where officers were sent to a local hotel or a motel to evict the guy that you're looking at in the middle of the screen here. I don't know exactly why they were being called in to evict him, but as you watch the video, you'll gain a little bit of idea. You know, this guy is probably mentally unstable, probably intoxicated, and is absolutely 100% a violent person and a very confrontational person. I believe that due to these circumstances, the police were called to scene, asked him to leave. He's going to leave, and then one of the officers is actually going to stick around for a little while. That officer that sticks around for a little while is going to have a violent confrontation with him about an hour later when he returns. That violent confrontation, or I guess the end result of it, was actually the officer was left on the ground after being shot by his own firearm. When I watched this video, the main thing that popped into my head was actually my defensive tactics training from 2022. I know that it was from 2022 because I created a folder on my desktop with every intention of actually making a series of videos using the material that we covered that day. But every year for defensive tactics, we'll have like an overarching theme, like a specific thing that we're trying to focus on that year. And in 2022, there were a couple of major incidents that led up to our in-service that year that kind of directed our training. And the training, to a large degree, was focused around weapon retention, and not just weapon retention, but maybe giving officers or causing officers to reconsider when they're going to deploy their weapons, because often when you're in close proximity to a suspect and you deploy a weapon, whether it be an intermediate weapon like a taser or a baton, or if you're at very close proximity to a suspect and you choose to deploy deadly force, the odds of that weapon being stripped and used against you increase. If you don't have proper standoff distance and you draw one of your intermediate weapons and that weapon is ineffective, then that weapon can be used against you. And in 2020 and 2021, there were very high profile cases where officers attempted to use a taser on a person. That person ended up stripping the officer of his taser, threatening to use that taser against the officer, causing the officer to use deadly force against that person. The Rayshad Brooks case in Atlanta, Georgia is a very well-known case of that, where, Rayshad Brooks was passed out in a Wendy's drive-thru. The officers responded to scene, pulled him out of the vehicle, and then the fight ensued. While they were fighting with him on the ground, they were unable to get physical control of him. One of the officers, seen here, chose to deploy his taser. The taser was not necessarily effective the way it was being deployed, so Rayshad Brooks was able to kind of get back up onto his butt and grab the taser. He eventually stripped the officer of his taser, then went running, turned and fired that taser at an officer. That taser then used deadly force. A suspect with a taser could incapacitate an officer, either bludgeon him to death or strip that officer of his firearm and kill him. Therefore, there is precedent for officers to use deadly force when a suspect has a taser and is threatening to use it against the officer. The charges against these officers were dismissed, and I think that the prosecutor actually came out and gave a statement saying, there's clear evidence that the officers acted within general accepted principles of when it's appropriate to use deadly force. There's also a high-profile case out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and this officer is still on trial for his life, where he was in a physical struggle with a suspect. He was at the point of near exhaustion, and drew his taser and attempted to use that taser to subdue the suspect. The suspect, and I can't pronounce his name, it's like Patrick Loyola, ended up stripping the officer of his taser, as you can see right here. This is when the taser is being stripped. They then had a struggle on the ground. The officer, fearing that the taser was then going to be used against him, drew his firearm, shot and killed Patrick Loyola, and is currently on trial for his life. So when you're looking at these situations on when to deploy one of your intermediate weapons or deadly force, you have to consider whether or not that weapon might be used against you. This is a situation today where, unfortunately, deadly force was used against the officer. He was seriously injured. He was only shot in the hand, thank God, but that could have very easily gone the other way. It could have very easily been more serious. And these are the type of situations that we want to avoid. This is what our training is. And it's these situations where, was the use of an intermediate weapon in that situation inappropriate? No, it was not inappropriate. It was those officers that chose to attempt to use a taser. That taser was in a completely appropriate use of force given that situation. In the situation, we're going to go through this video here in a minute. The situation with this officer that first attempted to use his taser, next attempted to use his baton, and then thirdly ended up considering the use of deadly force by drawing his weapon and not using it, but he drew his weapon because he was having it as a precaution, because he was afraid that the suspect was going to get the better of him and cause him serious physical harm. Using a firearm in that situation, there's a strong argument to be made that it was appropriate. I think there's also a strong argument to be made that it might not be appropriate in that situation, but we're not going to get into the minutia of that at this point in time. The overarching theme of this video today is I want to encourage officers that when you are within arm's reach of a suspect, particularly when you're by yourself, but even if there's more officers around, I want you to kind of reconsider using one of those tools on your belt in that situation. There's a phrase that goes around and is probably overused, but taser dependency is a real thing. But also just officers are reluctant to use their hands, and there's a variety of reasons why they're reluctant to use their hands. They might not have confidence in their ability. These other intermediate weapons are almost like force multipliers. They make you a lot stronger. They make you capable of handling situations that you wouldn't be able to physically handle. But the other side of that is that the way the public views uses of force, punching someone in the face is often looked at way more closely and with way more public outcry than using a taser. But just punching somebody, or unfortunately beating them down, unfortunately is often a much more appropriate use of force given the situation. And I think that a lot of officers are reluctant to just use the tools that God gave them because they're afraid that there's going to be somebody with a cell phone watching them, and then they're going to be the next viral cop that's got someone on the ground and is trying to beat them unconscious. Sometimes that is the most appropriate thing to do. Either that or just grab onto somebody, get their back, wrap them up, tie them up, hold them down. These are tactics that my buddies and I talk about all the time. And this is something that I tend to use as a tactic. I am much more likely to grab onto someone and just try to hold them down than I am to use a taser. I've been a cop for 13 years. I've only used my taser twice. One time was a guy that was high on bath salts and naked. He was like 6'2", naked, high on bath salts, not making any of his sense. He got a taser ride. He got 7 taser rides, as a matter of fact. The other time that I had to use a taser was, and I've talked about these on the channel before, I was fighting with a guy in a very small kitchen. It was probably smaller than the area where I have my desk right now. And we couldn't get his arms out from under him. We could have potentially got his arms out, but we would have probably broken one of his arms. But also there was no room to move around him. My buddy and I were both on top of him. He was refusing to give us his arms. So I did a close quarters taser deployment, pop 2 probes in the back, followed up on his calves, that lit his ass on fire. His arms came out immediately. We placed him under arrest without injuring him or us or breaking anything in the kitchen. It was 100% the appropriate thing to do at the time. Aside from that, I'm going hands-on. I'm grabbing onto people. I'm going to tackle you. I'm going to try to slam you in the ground. I'm going to knock your wind out. I've I've had people in headlocks before. These are all things that are extremely effective. And when you're in close range, you should consider them, because using a weapon against someone in that close proximity, it can very easily be used against you. That's going to be the thought of today. So getting into the video, officers were sent to trespass this guy from the location. He's a little bit argumentative. I want everyone to kind of focus on the way the officers are speaking to him and kind of how they handle the beginning of this situation.
All right, Mr. Adams, they want you to be issued a trespass warning, so that means you gotta
pay for it, bro.
I got you. They already refunded you. I made sure they did that.
How they refund me?
To your card. So here
my
you go.
card, how they refund me?
Here you go.
And where's that?
He's printing it out for me right
check
now.
this room up.
Check this out for me.
I got shit. I'll
Listen
leave
to
in a
me.
minute. Look.
You gotta leave. You got stuff.
stop
You
talking.
got stuff up in the room. Do you have stuff in the room?
Yeah, I got a whole bunch of shit in my room.
Okay, so we need to go up there and clear it out, because you got to go. Boss man.
Listen, you're not listening to me, because I'm not leaving a place that my name is on the property.
What you're going to do is leave, or you're going to go to jail for trespassing.
So that's it about that part of the video that I want to show people. In my opinion, the officers were very patient with him. They were very nice to him. They were actually being pretty kind to him. The part you're looking at right now, the officers are actually transporting some of his garbage out to his car for him. The officers don't have to do that, but the officers are being very nice, very respectful. And they're doing what we're being asked to do. This is also one of those times where I want to point out that the public and these activists and politicians and people that don't know what they're talking about are often saying that police showing up, just their presence is an escalation of force, or that, it's the officers that don't know how to de-escalate situations, and they're the ones that get people riled up or whatever. Well, look at this situation. The officers couldn't have been nicer. They're even helping him carry his stuff out. So they get him to leave. He leaves. One of the officers sticks around for a little while, and then the guy's going to come back.
Go ahead, talk to me. Go ahead, put your hands on me, man. Out. Come up here, I'm on the phone with him.
Who are you on the phone with?
911.
Who are you on the phone with?
Bro, you grab me, bro.
Hey,
Bust
man.
your fucking ass, man. Come on over here and stop talking. Go ahead, follow me. Follow me, man. She's following me. Come on. Keep going with it, bro. 911, buddy.
Hey, man.
Get your ass out my face,
what
bro.
did I tell you, man?
Hit me with that taser.
What did I tell you?
Hit me with that fucking
Get on
taser.
the ground, man. Get on the ground. Get on the ground.
Bro, hit me with that fucking taser for no reason, bro.
Get on the ground, bro.
Hit me with that
Get on the
taser.
ground.
Man, he's about to hit me with a taser for no reason. Bro, get off my
Give me
fucking
track
ass.
for a second.
Bro.
Hey, man.
Bro, I'm not.
All right, that's something that I wanted to point out. I started this at 1 minute and 15 seconds. That's about the time that the officer realized the guy was coming, and he goes to approach the guy. It's been 45 seconds, 40 seconds, 35 seconds, whatever the math works out to be. Now he is in very close proximity to the suspect. He's within arm's reach, and he's reaching for his radio, asking for more cars. This is something that, as a police officer, you need to be mindful of, and you need to think things through and think ahead. As soon as this guy starts coming back, say, hey, 190, you need to start me some more cars. This guy's coming back. That's the end of it. And then you can go and you can start talking to the person. Also, as the person is walking away, I know this is something that is incredibly difficult for a police officer to do, but if he's leaving the property, you plant your feet on the property. As long as he's leaving, let him leave. Now I know what the officer was doing. This guy is, he's under arrest for trespassing at this point in time. He was ordered to leave. He left and then he came back. It's an arrestable offense. He's also on the phone with 911, calling and complaining about the officer. Misuse of 911, 2 arrestable offenses. This officer is going to go and effect the arrest. I totally understand what he's doing. I've been in the same situation. I'm not saying that I would have done this any differently, much like the trespasser from last week. I'm not saying I would have done it differently, but I'm saying that we as officers need to reconsider, and this is ultimately going to end very badly for the officer. And the way you can prevent it from ending badly is by starting it the right way. You don't need to close the distance on somebody that doesn't need the distance closed on. That's where we're at right now. And he didn't ask for backup. soon enough. That would be the main thing that I want to get across. But now you're already in a situation. Once I get done talking, I'm going to let it play through. But you're already in a situation where you're in close proximity. Now your options are limited. Once I get to this distance from a suspect, I'm not thinking about the tools on my belt. I want my hands to be free. I want to be able to grab onto him, manipulate him, doing that stuff. If I draw my taser, I've got one hand on my taser and then one hand to deal with the suspect if that taser is ineffective. I think officers are often applying too much or relying too much on the tools on their tool belt and not enough just on the tools that God gave them. That's the overwhelming theme of this video that I want to get across to people.
I'm gonna bust your ass. Bitch, you a pussy dog. Taser, bitch, shoot me. Shoot me, bitch, you hit my taser, dog.
Dispatch, give me traffic.
Get back. Bitch, you beat me for nothing. Get off me.
Hey, man.
Bro, I will hurt you.
Put your fucking hands.
I will hurt you. Bro. Dude, get a pass. Where is the pass? Oh. Let's go down here, bro. Give me that phone. Quit. 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 On the phone with the wall. Quit. Dude, quit. Quit. Sorry, I'm not doing wrong.
So I am going to pause it. I'm sorry, I lied. This is something I want to point out because the first time that I watched it, I thought this was a citizen with a gun. It's actually not. It's a citizen. In his other hand, he was pointing, and he's going to use that same hand to call 911. In a minute, you're going to hear a gunshot, and I initially thought it was the citizen firing a warning shot. That's actually going to be the officer's gun going off and shooting him in the hand.
He's trying to shoot me. He's trying to shoot me. Quit.
Right there. You know, I thought that citizen had a firearm and was threatening the guy, but no, that was the officer's gun going off because he attempted to use his taser. The taser was ineffective. I believe the taser was ineffective because he didn't get two probes hit. I think the bottom probe probably went either between the guy's legs or off to the side. He ended up firing both cartridges. I heard them. For one reason or another, he only got one dart in on each deployment. That's what I believe happened. So then he puts his taser away. He draws his baton. I think that the baton is the most useless tool police officers are issued. I don't carry one. I have no use for one. I think that they're stupid. I've never seen one used effectively. This is a situation where it's not going to be used effectively. Also, he lost his baton. Now they're on the ground. The guy's on top of him. He's 100% in fear for his life. He's in fear of serious bodily harm. And he's going to grab his firearm out of his holster and be prepared to use it to defend himself. This is a situation where, you know, the officer allowed himself to get put in this situation, but it was caused by the suspect. All I'm saying is that as officers, we need to be aware that stuff like this has happened to these officers, and we want to make sure it doesn't happen to us. Every step that he has taken so far is a reasonable step. All of the uses of forces that he has chose to do thus far have been reasonable. The way I was trained very recently, and the way that I would encourage other officers to think about it as well is don't rely so much on the tools on your belt. Rely on the tools that God gave you. And unfortunately, this is just another situation where an officer was hurt because he didn't have that mentality.
He's not me. Get off! Get off! Dude, he's gonna try to shoot me. They're trying to shoot me. Shoot me. Quit. Quit. Stop with the center of the taser. Get off! Bro. Quit. He's trying to shoot out that thing.
Hey, get the...
Quit. I'm on the phone with dispatch for nothing.
Dispatch, he's got my gun. He's got my gun. I'm shot.
So there you have it. That's going to be the video for today. The two main thoughts that I have. One, nonviolent calls for service are not always nonviolent. Two, be aware of your surroundings. And I would highly encourage officers that if you're within arm's reach of a suspect, not to use your intermediate weapons unless it's absolutely necessary. You don't want one of your intermediate weapons to get taken from you which forces you to use deadly force in a situation where you did not want to use deadly force. You also don't want one of your intermediate or your deadly force weapon to be taken from you and used against you. That's going to be it for today, guys. I'll talk to you later.